"You think that voice deserves my stage?" Sebastian Vale asked. And the words sliced through Jefferson Hall like cold steel. At center stage, Sebastian Vale stood flawless in black, smiling with perfect teeth while 2,000 people heard his contempt. His microphone carried every syllable, every ounce of dismissal, every sharpened pause meant to make one small girl feel smaller. In the third row, Nia Brooks, 11 years old, sat still in her navy Sunday dress with the white collar. Around her, the youth choir audience shifted uneasily as whispers spread in fast ripples from seat to seat. A few people laughed, most only stared. No one wanted to be the first to look ashamed. Sebastian Vale lifted one hand toward the third row, as if calling a contestant instead of cornering a child. "Come on up here," he said. "Sing something alone. Let us hear exactly what we are dealing with." Nia Brooks rose slowly, her braids brushing her shoulders, her face calm in a way no one in the hall understood yet. She did not look down. She did not look away. Her eyes held something patient, something earned, something unafraid. Before a single note left her mouth, the room was already asking another question without words. What do you do when the gift inside you becomes the only weapon left between silence and survival? 3 weeks earlier, Nia Brooks had been washing dishes in a cramped apartment in South Memphis. Lorraine Brooks stepped into the kitchen, holding a flyer, and set it on the counter between unpaid bills and instant coffee. She read carefully because in homes like theirs, even hope could feel fragile enough to tear. The flyer announced the Sebastian Vale Youth Excellence auditions for students ages 10 through 18. The winner, it said, would perform at the Winter Gala concert before a major Memphis audience. The apartment walls were thin. Nia Brooks could hear Mrs. Park's television through one side and shouting upstairs. Their kitchen carried the smell of soap, old coffee, and quiet worry that never quite left the room. Still, that flyer brought in a little light, and Lorraine Brooks noticed the way her daughter stared at it. Sebastian Vale belonged to a different city than the one Nia Brooks walked through each day. His childhood home in Germantown was a restored Victorian mansion with polished floors and 6 bathrooms. One room had been built just for music, with acoustics designed by a studio engineer from Nashville. Sebastian Vale's father was a circuit court judge with influence that opened doors before anyone knocked. His mother curated art at the Brooks Museum and moved comfortably through rooms that recognized status on sight. By age 9, Sebastian Vale had already studied with 3 private vocal coaches. By 12, he had performed in prestigious halls. By 16, he had a recording contract. At 24, he was already called Memphis's golden voice, polished by talent, and protected by privilege. Nia Brooks learned music in a very different room, one no magazine would ever photograph. New Hope Baptist sat on a corner lot where weeds pushed through cracked sidewalk and paint peeled in the sun. The church was 70 years old, and the upright piano inside was older than any child who listened to it. Every Sunday, Nia Brooks sat in the third pew with Caleb Brooks and Josiah Brooks. Up front, Lorraine Brooks sang in the choir with a tired body and a steady soul. In Nia Brooks's lap rested a hymnal that had once belonged to Ruth Brooks. Its pages were soft as cloth, its spine broken, its margins crowded with tiny pencil marks. Those marks were not lyrics. They were numbers, intervals, arrows, and symbols for relationships between sounds. Ruth Brooks had once taught music in public school before consolidation erased her position. She taught Nia Brooks to hear the space between notes long before anyone taught theory by name. She taught her how chords leaned toward resolution and how sorrow lived inside minor shapes. Nia Brooks never studied formal theory, but she absorbed music like some children absorb a second language. At church, she noticed when the pianist played B-flat instead of B, natural, in a familiar verse. She heard the exact moment Brother Ezekiel Price drifted sharp during communion. She knew the sanctuary's acoustics better than most people knew their own living rooms. She knew where sound bloomed, where it died, and which corner swallowed the lower frequencies whole. She never spoke about any of it, because some truths feel too strange to hand to other people. But Lorraine Brooks noticed. Mothers notice what the world does not have language for yet. One Wednesday evening after prayer service, Lorraine Brooks found Nia Brooks folding chairs in the church basement. Her daughter was humming, but not a melody. She was humming harmony to a song that was not playing. It was layered harmony too, the kind that required hearing missing parts and choosing a space between them. "Baby," Lorraine Brooks asked softly, "how long have you been doing that?" Nia Brooks looked up with honest confusion. "Doing what?" she asked. "Hearing things that are not there," Lorraine Brooks said, still holding a church bulletin in her hand. Nia Brooks stopped folding. Chair legs scraped softly across old linoleum. "They are there," she answered. "They are just under the other sounds people listen to." Lorraine Brooks sat down and studied her daughter the way one studies a storm far off on the horizon. This was the child who packed lunches, helped with homework, and never complained about too little. "You want to audition," Lorraine Brooks said, not asking, only naming what had already settled in the room. "I do not know," Nia Brooks replied, though both of them heard the truth under the hesitation. "Yes, you do," said Lorraine Brooks. And finally Nia Brooks met her mother's eyes. "He will not pick me," Nia Brooks whispered, already hearing Sebastian Vale's judgment in her head. "Maybe not," Lorraine Brooks said, "but you will still sing." The audition application required a recommendation letter. So Nia Brooks went to Sister Miriam Holloway. At 67, Sister Miriam Holloway had taught music for decades and still had a voice that moved stained glass. She listened to the request, nodded once, and wrote only 3 sentences. She wrote that Nia Brooks possessed perfect pitch and exceptional tonal memory. She wrote that Nia Brooks's ear was the finest she had encountered in 40 years of teaching. She wrote that this child should be given every possible chance to develop her gift. She did not mention that Nia Brooks had never taken a formal lesson in her life. She did not mention the worn hymnal, the pencil marks, or the hidden precision of church acoustics. She did not mention that Nia Brooks could identify which microphone was feeding back before anyone else heard it. The application also required a recording, so Nia Brooks borrowed Lorraine Brooks's phone one evening. In their living room, while Caleb Brooks and Josiah Brooks watched cartoons, she sang "His Eye is on the Sparrow." She sang it a cappella in one take, with no rehearsal studio, no second attempt, and no need for any of that. Lorraine Brooks uploaded the file at the library because their internet at home was too slow. They expected nothing. People like them had learned what hoping too loudly could cost. 3 days later, an email arrived with the Jefferson Concert Hall logo at the top. Nia Brooks had been selected as one of 40 finalists for the live auditions. The email listed arrival details, dress code, performance schedule, and one additional line in bold. Finalists would observe Sebastian Vale's vocal masterclass before the final audition round. Attendance was mandatory. Lorraine Brooks ironed Nia Brooks's navy dress twice, as though careful hands could prepare a child for power. Caleb Brooks asked if he and Josiah Brooks could come watch from the audience. Josiah Brooks asked whether there would be food, and everyone smiled for one brief, soft second. On the bus ride downtown, Nia Brooks said almost nothing at all. She held Ruth Brooks's hymnal in her lap and traced the pencil marks with her thumb. She did not know yet that those marks would matter in a concert hall built for perfect sound. She only knew she heard things others missed, and sometimes being heard required more than a beautiful voice. The masterclass began 2 hours before auditions under bright rehearsal lights on the Jefferson stage. Sebastian Vale stood there in black joggers, a fitted white shirt, and designer sneakers that announced money without speaking. Behind him, the grand piano gleamed under stage lights, while 40 finalists filled the first rows below. Nia Brooks sat in row 3, seat 12, her hymnal resting closed in her lap. Most of the other finalists came in groups, whispering, laughing, and comparing songs and teachers. A blonde girl 2 seats away had a vocal coach leaning close with last-minute instructions. A boy in the front row wore a blazer with a private academy crest stitched proudly over his chest. Sebastian Vale paced and spoke about breath support, resonance, and diaphragmatic control like every word was a favor. He demonstrated a flashy run, technically clean and easy to admire if status was already doing part of the singing. Several finalists clapped immediately. Prestige teaches people when to clap before the truth arrives. Then Sebastian Vale stopped pacing and scanned the audience until his eyes found Nia Brooks. "You in the blue dress," he said, and every nearby head turned toward her. "You are one of the finalists, right?" he asked, smiling brightly in a way that felt sharp. "Yes, sir," Nia Brooks answered, her voice small only because the room had grown too watchful. "What are you planning to sing?" Sebastian Vale asked, already sounding amused by the unknown answer. "His Eye is on the Sparrow," Nia Brooks said, and someone in the back snickered. "A hymn," Sebastian Vale replied, lifting one eyebrow. "How traditional." He stepped to the edge of the stage and called it a teaching moment for everyone in the room. "Come up here and sing the first verse alone," he said. "Let us see what we are working with." The hall went quiet. Nia Brooks closed the hymnal and rose. She walked down the aisle, climbed the stage stairs, and felt the heat of lights stronger than she expected. Sebastian Vale handed her a microphone and stepped back with his arms folded. Nia Brooks tapped her right finger against her thigh, once, Twice, 3 times. Counting silently, she lifted the microphone, and for one strange second, the whole room seemed to inhale together. She began softly, but after only 8 bars, Sebastian Vale cut in with a dismissive wave. "That is enough. Thank you," he said, his tone polished, casual, and cruel. The camera from the audience caught Nia Brooks nodding once and walking back to her seat. It also caught the other finalists looking away, because shame moves fast when it belongs to someone else. By evening, the 37-second clip had 4,000 views online. By morning, it had 40,000, and the comments split into loud camps of certainty. Some said Sebastian Vale was right and that Nia Brooks was not ready for a stage like this. Others asked why he stopped her before she could finish even one complete verse. Many mocked the hymn choice, as if church music made a voice less serious by itself. Nia Brooks did not see any of it because Lorraine Brooks kept the phone in her purse. But by Monday at Booker T. Washington, the hallway already knew her face. A girl from English class stopped Nia Brooks and asked why she had not sung something better. Nia Brooks said nothing. She went to class, sat in the back, and opened her algebra notebook. Whispers drifted around her like smoke, thin and ugly and impossible to pin down. At lunch, Caleb Brooks found her in the library with a bag of chips and worry on his face. "Kids are saying Sebastian Vale was right," Caleb Brooks said quietly. "They say you embarrassed yourself." Nia Brooks turned a page in her textbook and tried to keep her breathing even. "Maybe you do not believe that," Caleb Brooks added, wanting to leave her at least one clean door. Nia Brooks looked up. "It does not matter what I believe," she said, though it clearly did. "Are you going to quit?" he asked. And the question hung there between them like a test. Nia Brooks held his gaze. "Did I say that?" she answered. And Caleb Brooks smiled. The final audition was still set for Friday evening, and Jefferson Hall issued an official statement. It promised every finalist equal opportunity and said decisions would be based on technique and artistic merit. 2 days later, another email arrived. And fairness quietly changed clothes. A new panel of 3 judges selected by Sebastian Vale's management would now decide the winner. Performance time had been cut from 2 minutes to only 90 seconds. Another line banned religious and folk songs from the final round, effective immediately. After Wednesday service, Lorraine Brooks showed the new email to Sister Miriam Holloway. Sister Miriam Holloway read it twice and said, "They are changing the rules to box her out." "Can they do that?" Lorraine Brooks asked, already hearing the answer inside the question. "They just did," Sister Miriam Holloway replied, and then looked at Nia Brooks. Lorraine Brooks told her daughter she did not have to continue if she no longer wanted this. "I will choose another song," Nia Brooks said instead. At the church piano, Sister Miriam Holloway asked what she was thinking of singing now. Nia Brooks touched middle C, then E, then G, and let the triad ring in the sanctuary. "Something with a high B flat," she said calmly, and Sister Miriam Holloway narrowed her eyes. "Why that note?" she asked, hearing strategy under the stillness. "Because Sebastian Vale cannot hit it clean," Nia Brooks answered. She had listened closely enough to his recordings to hear where he strained and lost resonance. "And you can?" asked Sister Miriam Holloway. Nia Brooks played the note softly and listened to its truth. "Yes, ma'am?" A small, sharp smile crossed Sister Miriam Holloway's face. "Then we better get to work." The next afternoon, Brother Nathaniel Boone was tuning the old church piano when it developed a rattle. He muttered that the D above middle C sounded flat, maybe by a quarter tone. From the third pew, Nia Brooks looked up from algebra and quietly corrected him. "It is 35 cents flat," she said. And Brother Nathaniel Boone turned at once. He struck the note again, opened a tuner app, and stared as the needle hovered almost exactly there. "The E above it is 12 cents sharp," Nia Brooks added. "The F is almost perfect." Brother Nathaniel Boone tested both notes and found she was right about each one. 4 full seconds of silence dropped into the sanctuary before he sat beside her. "Does Sister Miriam Holloway know about this?" he asked, still holding the tuning hammer. "About what?" Nia Brooks asked. "Because a lifelong gift can feel ordinary inside the person who carries it." "Perfect pitch," he said. "Not approximate, perfect." He asked how long she had been able to hear like that, and Nia Brooks only shrugged. "Always," she said. Brother Nathaniel Boone laughed once, sharp with amazement. "Baby girl, that is a huge deal." He told her people like her were rare, astonishingly rare, and often reshaped rooms without meaning to. "Does Sebastian Vale know?" he asked. "No, sir," Nia Brooks said. "Good," Brother Nathaniel Boone replied. "Keep that card close. You will need it one day." When Sister Miriam Holloway arrived, Brother Nathaniel Boone told her everything that had just happened. "I already knew," she said quietly, and both adults turned to look at Nia Brooks again. Nia Brooks was already back to algebra, as if nothing about the world had just changed. Sister Miriam Holloway pulled out sheet music for O Mio Babino Caro and laid it on the piano. It was on the approved list, and the optional ending climbed to the high B-flat they needed. "I listened last night," Nia Brooks said. "Renee Fleming, Maria Callas, the film version too." "What did you notice?" asked Sister Miriam Holloway. "Fleming breathes before the climax. Callas does not. The phrasing changes the whole feeling." Sister Miriam Holloway nodded and set the score flat. "Sing it for me." No accompaniment. Nia Brooks stood, closed her eyes, found G-sharp in her head, and began in careful Italian. The pronunciation was not native, but the tone was pure, and each note landed with astonishing precision. The line curved upward and bloomed without wobble, without strain, without any need to prove itself. When the climactic phrase arrived, Nia Brooks did not take the extra breath most singers needed. She opened her throat and released the high B-flat, full, bright, and perfectly supported. The note filled the sanctuary, touched stained glass, and made Brother Nathaniel Boone stop moving completely. When she finished, the silence felt heavy and electric, like air after lightning. Sister Miriam Holloway rose slowly and told her to sing exactly like that on Friday night. "And when he realizes what you just did," she said, "stay humble, stay quiet, and let the sound speak." Friday morning, the final performance order arrived by email, and Nia Brooks was number 37 of 40. She would sing just before the last 3 finalists, late enough for the hall to grow tired and restless. The email also said Sebastian Vale would provide live commentary after every performance. At the hospital registration desk, Lorraine Brooks read that line and called Sister Miriam Holloway at once. "They are setting her up," Lorraine Brooks said into the phone, voice low and controlled. "I know," Sister Miriam Holloway answered. "We let her sing anyway." At school, the viral clip had crossed 200,000 views, and Cruelty had become more confident. Someone made a reaction video. Someone else auto-tuned Nia Brooks' 8 bars into a joke. The comments turned personal now, saying she did not belong, that she should withdraw, that she was too proud. Between classes, Nia Brooks hid in a bathroom stall, while 2 girls from drama club talked outside. One said she heard Nia Brooks was trying opera now, even though she did not speak Italian. The other said she should withdraw before embarrassing herself again in front of the whole city. Nia Brooks waited until they left, washed her hands, and looked into the mirror without expression. Her navy dress hung in her locker beneath old dry-cleaning plastic saved from someone else's clothes. She had braided her own hair at 5 that morning, while Caleb Brooks and Josiah Brooks still slept. Her phone buzzed with an unknown number, telling her to withdraw and save herself the humiliation. Another message said she was making black people look bad. Another called her nobody. Nia Brooks deleted each one, turned off her phone, and slid it deep into her backpack. She still had English, then history, then study hall, then home, then the hall. Before class, she opened Ruth Brooks's hymnal to a random page and traced one penciled symbol slowly. It was a private language of sound and relation that no one in that building could read. She pressed her finger hard enough to feel the old indentation in the paper, then closed the book. The silence before a storm is never empty. It is crowded with pressure, weight, and what must happen next. Jefferson Concert Hall filled slowly that evening as families entered with cameras, programs, and rehearsed smiles. Backstage, the green room smelled of hairspray, nerves, and fabric warmed by anxious bodies. Nia Brooks sat near the back wall on a folding chair, while other finalists whispered in tight little groups. Out in the audience, Lorraine Brooks sat in the 5th row with Caleb Brooks and Josiah Brooks. Sister Miriam Holloway had come too, and on arrival, she only squeezed Nia Brooks's shoulder once. Number 12 was performing when a silver-haired woman wearing a conservatory badge entered the green room. She scanned the room, found Nia Brooks, and asked her to come with her for a moment. In a small office lined with filing cabinets, the woman introduced herself as Dr. Eleanor Whitmore. She did not sit. She only looked at Nia Brooks and asked, "Who trained you?" "Sister Miriam Holloway at church. Before her, my grandmother Ruth Brooks," Nia Brooks answered. "No," said Dr. Eleanor Whitmore. "I mean who taught breath control, resonance, and register transitions like that." She played Nia Brooks's audition recording on her phone, filling the room with the hymn. At a floated soft high note, Dr. Eleanor Whitmore paused the audio and looked up sharply. "That is formal technique," she said. "Someone extraordinary taught you that." Again, Nia Brooks answered, My grandmother. She taught me to hear before anything else. What was her name, Doctor? Eleanor Whitmore asked. And history hid inside the question. Ruth Brooks, Nia Brooks said. She taught at Douglas High before the program ended. Dr. Eleanor Whitmore went still and slowly sat down as memory reached across decades. She asked whether Ruth Brooks had studied at Juilliard and sung with the Memphis Opera in the 70s. Nia Brooks nodded. She came home when my mother was born. After that, opportunities closed. Dr. Eleanor Whitmore said she had heard Ruth Brooks perform in 1978 and never forgot that voice. She was world-class, Dr. Eleanor Whitmore whispered. She could have sung anywhere. Outside the office, muffled applause signaled another finalist ending under easier terms than this child faced. I hear your grandmother in you, Dr. Eleanor Whitmore said. In the color, in the phrasing. Then she stood and told Nia Brooks not to thank her because the room had already judged her. Go show them what Ruth Brooks taught you, she said. Not for them. For her. Nia Brooks returned to the green room and watched the monitor while number 35 sang. A tenor from a wealthy school cracked on a high note and still received gentle, encouraging praise. Number 36 sang with technical polish and almost no soul, and the audience applauded anyway. Then the stage manager called number 37, and Nia Brooks rose without any visible tremor. She carried nothing in her hands, only Ruth Brooks's hymnal, hidden in a pocket sewn into her dress. The weight of that old book pressed against her ribs as she walked the concrete hallway to the stage. From the stage, she could see Lorraine Brooks in the 5th row with hands clasped tightly. Caleb Brooks gave a tiny wave. Josiah Brooks leaned so far forward he almost stood. At the judges' table, Sebastian Vale wore the same bright, cruel smile from the masterclass. Welcome back, Nia Brooks, he said into the microphone. I see you decided to continue. A few scattered laughs rose, then died when Nia Brooks did not react at all. What will you be singing for us tonight? Sebastian Vale asked, pen poised above his score sheet. Oh mio babino caro, Nia Brooks answered. And Sebastian Vale lifted his brows theatrically. He warned the room that the final phrase required a high B-flat many professionals struggled to reach. Are you sure you want to attempt that? He asked loudly enough for the entire hall to hear. Yes, sir, Nia Brooks replied, fingers finding the hidden hymnal through her dress. He told her that if she could not reach the note cleanly, she should take it down an octave. I understand, Nia Brooks said, though what she understood ran deeper than his warning. The accompanist looked ready at the piano, but Nia Brooks shook her head softly. No piano, please, she said, and the accompanist glanced at the stage manager in confusion. The stage manager looked to Sebastian Vale, who leaned back into his microphone with disbelief. You want to sing Puccini a cappella? He asked, letting the question entertain the room. Yes, sir, Nia Brooks answered, and a short skeptical laugh escaped from the balcony. Well, said Sebastian Vale, this should be educational. And then he gave her the stage. Nia Brooks stepped into the spotlight and closed her eyes, while programs rustled with expected failure. She found G-sharp in her mind, clear as a tuning fork, exact as memory. In her head, Ruth Brooks whispered, let the breath carry the sound. Do not push. Let it float. Then Nia Brooks began, and the first phrase entered the hall soft and tender. Her Italian was careful rather than perfect, but honesty gave the line an intimacy perfection could not fake. The voice started small, not weak, only contained, like warmth gathering before dawn. The audience stopped rustling. Programs lowered. Doubt itself seemed to lean forward and listen. The second phrase rose, and Nia Brooks followed it with flawless placement and growing emotional weight. She was not singing to the judges now. She was singing to the sanctuary and the basement chairs. She sang to the cracked sidewalk outside New Hope Baptist and the old hymnal in her dress. The line climbed higher, and Nia Brooks let resonance carry the sound instead of forcing it upward. No wobble touched the sustained notes. No panic tightened her throat. The tone stayed crystalline. The aria demanded urgency, and Nia Brooks gave urgency without losing tenderness. Then the climactic phrase approached, the very note Sebastian Vale had publicly warned her about. Many singers breathe before that summit. Nia Brooks did not. She opened her throat and released the high B-flat, full, bright, resonant, and impossibly secure. The sound rang through Jefferson Hall like a bell and seemed to wake the room from itself. It reached the back balcony, touched the chandeliers, and turned in the hall into a second instrument. At the judges' table, Sebastian Vale's pen stopped moving, as if the note had frozen his hand. In the 10th row, Dr. Eleanor Whitmore closed her eyes and smiled through rising tears. Nia Brooks held the B flat for 4 seconds, then 5, then 6 without pitch breaking once. She resolved the phrase gently and ended the aria with the same soft truth with which it began. For 2 or 3 seconds after the final note, the hall became complete and absolute stillness. Then one person stood in the back, then another, then a section, and then half the room rose. The applause came like thunder, not polite, not dutiful, but shocked and fully real. Under the lights, Nia Brooks opened her eyes and saw shapes standing everywhere. Lorraine Brooks covered her mouth with both hands, while tears ran down her face. Caleb Brooks stared at the stage wide-eyed. Josiah Brooks forgot even to clap at first. At the judges' table, Sebastian Vale sat pale and frozen with an untouched score sheet beneath his hand. The standing ovation lasted 17 full seconds before the hall slowly settled into silence again. Sebastian Vale stood and took the microphone, but the smile he wore had changed shape. "Well," he said, "that was unexpected." And nervous laughter cracked weakly through the room. He admitted she had hit the note, then quickly called a cappella singing a risky choice. He said that without accompaniment, any pitch deviation became obvious. Trying to reopen control, then he asked how long Nia Brooks had studied classical repertoire, and with which teacher. "I have not, sir," Nia Brooks answered, and a louder murmur moved through the hall. "You learned Puccini in 4 days?" Sebastian Vale asked, his jaw tightening around each word. "Yes, sir," Nia Brooks said, and the truth itself began stripping authority from his voice. He pressed further, demanding to know who taught vowel placement, breath support, and register transitions. "Sister Miriam Holloway at New Hope Baptist," Nia Brooks answered, naming church without apology. "A church choir director," Sebastian Vale repeated, making the phrase sound like a deficiency. He turned to the audience and called the moment a lesson about raw talent and professional training. He said talent alone was not enough. That technique required maturity, consistency, and sustainability. Then he looked back at Nia Brooks and told her she had potential, but was not ready. The hall fell into that terrible silence people make when they know unfairness, just put on a suit. Nia Brooks stood still under the spotlight and said, "Thank you for your feedback." Then she walked off the stage without argument, while the audience did not know whether to clap or ache. In the darkness backstage, Nia Brooks leaned against a concrete wall and took one long, steady breath. The final 3 contestants sang after her, but none attempted anything as dangerous or true as what she had done. The judges disappeared for 12 minutes to deliberate, while the audience waited in restless silence. Backstage, finalists whispered in nervous groups, and several kept glancing toward Nia Brooks. A girl who had sung Schumann sat beside her and quietly said that performance had been extraordinary. She added that her mother was a voice teacher and had texted that Nia Brooks's technique sounded college level. "He is scared of you," the girl said, meaning Sebastian Vale, but Nia Brooks only shook her head. Before they could say more, the stage manager called every finalist back to the holding area. On the monitor, Sebastian Vale stood with the other judges and a set of envelopes in his hand. 3rd place went to a baritone from Overton. 2nd place went to the polished soprano. Then Sebastian Vale opened the final envelope and paused just long enough to make it theatrical. "Our 1st place winner," he announced, "is Preston Hale." And the hall answered with applause. Preston Hale, a tenor with private coaching and on every advantage, walked on stage to accept the trophy. In the green room, several finalists swore softly because everyone there knew what had just happened. Nia Brooks felt no surprise, only a strange quiet settling inside her body. She stood, folded her chair, and started toward the exit, without asking anyone to explain the obvious. In the doorway stood Dr. Eleanor Whitmore, beside a gray-bearded reporter, wearing a press badge. "This is Gabriel Park," Dr. Eleanor Whitmore said. "He writes for the Commercial Appeal." Gabriel Park said he had recorded her performance and wanted permission to publish it with a story. "What kind of story?" Nia Brooks asked, still hearing the hall echo inside her chest. "The truth," Gabriel Park answered. "The most talented singer tonight did not win." He said he had covered Memphis music for 23 years and knew exactly what he had heard. He named the B-flat, the phrasing, the support, and the audacity of singing Puccini a cappella. "People need to hear this," Gabriel Park said. Not the version they were just sold. Nia Brooks thought of Ruth Brooks, the hymnal, and 4 days inside an empty sanctuary. Then she said yes and followed Gabriel Park out into the Memphis evening air. The article ran on Sunday morning with a photo of Nia Brooks on stage, eyes closed mid-phrase. Its headline called her the voice Sebastian Vale did not want the public to hear. Gabriel Park described the performance in technical detail, careful enough to survive denial. He quoted Dr. Eleanor Whitmore, who called the technique conservatory level and extraordinary for a child. He also told the story of Ruth Brooks, from Juilliard to Carnegie Hall, to vanished opportunities. He explained how a world-class gift had been forced home and preserved inside community instead of institutions. The article linked the full performance video, cleaned by a volunteer sound engineer. By Sunday evening, the video had 50,000 views. By Monday morning, it crossed 200,000. Voice teachers, opera singers, and conservatory students filled the comments with stunned analysis and praise. One wrote that the breath control was unreal for any age, let alone an 11-year-old girl. Another pointed to the B-flat itself, 6 seconds of steady pitch with no wobble or strain. On Tuesday, a major classical blogger posted a technical breakdown of Nia Brooks's aria. She compared the performance to famous recordings and concluded Nia Brooks out-executed several professionals. The analysis went viral and pushed the story far beyond Memphis into national arts conversation. By Wednesday, NPR called. So did the New York Times and a classical station in Boston. Jefferson Hall's inbox filled with support, outrage, and demands for an explanation. That afternoon, Sebastian Vale posted an Instagram statement defending the competition results. He said every finalist had been judged fairly according to established criteria and overall artistic merit. He called Nia Brooks talented and full of potential, but not yet professionally ready. The internet rejected the statement almost immediately and filled the comments with blunt truth. People wrote that Nia Brooks had outsung Sebastian Vale and exposed gatekeeping in real time. Others said professional readiness was polished language for fear and bias hiding behind etiquette. On Thursday evening, Nia Brooks's phone rang from an unknown number she almost ignored. The woman introduced herself as Vivian Rhodes, a vocal producer from Paramount Records in Nashville. She said she had heard the performance and wanted to meet Nia Brooks and Lorraine Brooks. "Are you free this weekend?" Vivian Rhodes asked. And Nia Brooks glanced at the old hymnal. Outside, Memphis traffic hummed. In the next room, Caleb Brooks and Josiah Brooks argued over a game. "Yes, ma'am," Nia Brooks said. "We are free." Saturday afternoon, they returned to Jefferson Hall, but not to the main stage where she had been judged. This time, the event was in a smaller chamber room that seated 200, and every seat was filled. Vivian Rhodes had arranged everything after hearing the truth in that viral recording. She had invited journalists, conservatory faculty, local media, and voice teachers from several states. Families from Nia Brooks's neighborhood came too, along with people from New Hope Baptist and her school. From backstage, Nia Brooks peeked through the curtain and saw row after row of waiting faces. In the front sat professors from Rhodes College and the University of Memphis, notebooks already open. Near the back wall, standing because no seats were left, was Sebastian Vale, alone and unhidden. He wore jeans and a black jacket, trying to disappear inside the room he had helped create. Beside the curtain, Vivian Rhodes told Nia Brooks she did not have to do this if she was not ready. Nia Brooks nodded. "I know," she said. And that was enough. The lights dimmed, and Vivian Rhodes walked onto the small stage with a microphone. She thanked everyone for coming, then said they were not there for speeches. "You are here because you heard something true," Vivian Rhodes said. "Now hear it again." She stepped aside and called Nia Brooks to the stage. The applause that welcomed Nia Brooks was warm, not cautious, not curious, but ready. The lights were softer here, and she could see faces clearly instead of singing into glare. She saw Lorraine Brooks, Caleb Brooks, Josiah Brooks, and Sister Miriam Holloway in the front rows. She also saw Sebastian Vale in the back, standing very still with his face unreadable. "I am going to sing 2 songs," Nia Brooks said quietly, without needing a microphone. "First, O mio babino caro, the one I sang last Friday." She closed her eyes, found the pitch hash, and began again, this time without fear pressing against each note. The technical precision was still there, but now the room heard something else too. Freedom. Nia Brooks no longer sang under judgment, score sheets, or the need to prove she belonged. She sang for herself, for Ruth Brooks, and for every room that had taught her in secret. When the high B-flat arrived, she held it not for 6 seconds, but longer. 6 became 7. 7 became 8, and the chamber room seemed to vibrate with the sound. When she finished, nobody moved for 3 full seconds, because awe often arrives before applause can form. Then the room erupted. People stood. Someone whistled. A professor wiped tears from both eyes. Nia Brooks waited for the noise to quiet before speaking again. "The second song," she said, "is His Eye is on the Sparrow, the one I was not allowed to finish." She found the starting pitch and let the first phrase float gently into the room. This time, nobody interrupted her. Nobody cut her off. Nobody explained her own gift back to her. The song moved through every corner of the chamber hall and settled into every waiting heart. It carried church walls, old grief, grace, and the kind of truth that needs no permission. When the final note faded, the silence that followed felt sacred and complete. Then a standing ovation rose and lasted 90 full seconds without weakening. Nia Brooks stood with her hands at her sides and let it pass through the room like weather. When the applause finally softened, Vivian Rhodes returned to the microphone. She said someone had asked to speak, and the room sharpened at once. Then she said the name, Sebastian Vale. A different silence took hold, tight and watchful, as Sebastian Vale walked from the back of the room. He climbed the stage slowly, every step audible, and Vivian Rhodes handed him the microphone. He faced the audience first, not Nia Brooks, and said he had come because he needed to hear it again. He said he needed to confirm what he already suspected on Friday night. Then he turned to Nia Brooks and said, "You are better than me." The room held its breath as he kept going, unable to soften the truth anymore. "Not potentially better," Sebastian Vale said. "Not someday better. Better right now, at 11 years old." He confessed that he had spent 15 years building a career, studying with elite teachers, winning awards. Then he admitted that on Friday, he had watched a child do something he himself could not do. He said he had never been able to sustain that B-flat that way, not with that freedom and control. Someone in the audience started to clap, but Sebastian Vale lifted his hand and asked them not to. He said he was not there for redemption or applause, because he had earned neither. Then he turned fully toward Nia Brooks and said he had been afraid of her. Afraid because she was young, black, church-trained, and brilliant without everything he had been handed. Afraid because if she could do that without his world, then what did his world really prove? So he dismissed her. He humiliated her. He used his platform to make her small. He said he had tried to make her smaller because making her smaller made him feel safer. His hands shook as he admitted he was completely, unforgivably wrong. He set the microphone down and started to walk away, but Nia Brooks stopped him by speaking softly. She thanked him for saying it, then told him she had not sung to prove him wrong. She said Ruth Brooks had taught her that some things remain true whether anyone admits them or not. Then Nia Brooks told Sebastian Vale that he had a gift too, and that one wrong act erased neither talent nor humanity. Tears stood in Sebastian Vale's eyes. He nodded once, unable to answer, and left the stage. Vivian Rhodes returned to the microphone and announced that the Memphis Conservatory was offering Nia Brooks a full scholarship. Housing would be included if Nia Brooks and her family chose to accept when the time came. Vivian Rhodes added that Paramount Records also wanted to discuss a development deal, with no pressure and no rush. The room erupted again, but this time, the sound felt less like surprise and more like restoration. 3 months later, the Memphis Conservatory announced the Unbreakable Voices Scholarship Program. The program offered full funding to gifted students from underserved communities who lacked formal training access. There were no application fees, no demand for prior private lessons, and no quiet punishment for poverty. Auditions would be held in community centers, churches, and public schools across the region. Dr. Eleanor Whitmore was appointed to direct the new program from the beginning. Sister Miriam Holloway joined the selection committee and insisted on listening for truth before polish. The first round drew 300 applicants from Tennessee, Mississippi, and Arkansas. Sebastian Vale donated the entire purse from his next 3 concerts to fund the program's first year. He made no public announcement. He only sent the check with a handwritten note. It read, "For the voices I almost silenced, and nothing else." The story changed something in Memphis, not all at once, but enough to crack old walls. A black music teacher at Whitehaven High received funding for a real recording studio. A Vietnamese girl from Fraser won a full scholarship after her violin video reached the right ears. A boy from Orange Mound with perfect pitch and cerebral palsy joined the Memphis Symphony Youth Program. Jefferson Hall revised its audition policies after public pressure. Pressure could no longer be ignored. Preliminary screenings became anonymous. Judging panels became more diverse. Community voices received voting power. That December, the Winter Gala featured 5 performers instead of 1, and Nia Brooks was among them. She sang O Mio Babino Caro with the Memphis Symphony Orchestra behind her. She wore the same navy dress. Lorraine Brooks had offered to buy a new one, but Nia Brooks refused. She wanted to remember exactly where she had started and how far truth had traveled in that same fabric. The performance was live-streamed, and 400,000 people watched from phones, laptops, and living rooms. When Nia Brooks held the high B-flat this time, she carried it even longer with orchestral support beneath it. The comments exploded with awe, tears, and the realization that gatekeeping had been caught in public. After the concert, donors and musicians gathered for a reception under warm lights and polished conversation. Near the dessert table, Nia Brooks stood with Caleb Brooks and Josiah Brooks, who were loading cookies onto plates. A woman approached wearing a university pin and introduced herself as Professor Celeste Vaughn from Yale. She said she studied oral gospel traditions and how musical knowledge traveled outside formal institutions. She told Nia Brooks that the story of Ruth Brooks and New Hope Baptist mattered historically. She wanted to document that genius had existed in places powerful people were never trained to notice. Nia Brooks took the card and said Ruth Brooks would have liked that very much. Professor Celeste Vaughn smiled and said future generations needed records that told the truth. When she left, Caleb Brooks handed Nia Brooks a cookie and said she was famous now. Nia Brooks shook her head and said that was not the right word for what had happened. 400,000 people had watched her sing, but that was not the same as fame. When Caleb Brooks asked what it was, Nia Brooks looked out the window toward the city lights. Somewhere in Memphis, she knew, other children were learning to sing in churches no camera ever entered. Somewhere, other grandmothers were teaching in rooms no institution had thought important enough to save. It is a door opening, Nia Brooks said. For more than just me. 5 years later, Nia Brooks sat in a Nashville studio listening to the final mix of her debut album. She was 16 now, taller, steadier, her voice deeper, but still bright with the clarity people remembered. She had turned down major label offers that wanted to market her as a miracle more than a musician. Instead, she signed with an independent label that let her tell her story in her own language. The album was called Pencil Marks, after the symbols Ruth Brooks had left in the hymnal margins. It held 12 songs, half in English, half in Italian, with gospel roots woven through classical forms. Every composer, arranger, and producer was credited clearly because Nia Brooks had learned what erasure looked like. In the liner notes she wrote, "For Ruth Brooks, who taught me truth is a sound you cannot edit." Across from her sat a young NPR journalist with kind eyes and a recorder between them. The journalist asked what had changed her life most: the viral video, the scholarship, or the performances. Nia Brooks thought carefully before answering, because the true turning point lived earlier than headlines did. She said it was not her voice that changed her life, but the moment she chose not to lie about it. The journalist leaned in, asking what she meant by that. Nia Brooks said that night at Jefferson Hall, she could have made herself smaller to comfort other people. She could have apologized for taking up space. She could have pretended Sebastian Vale was right. She could have acted grateful for humiliation and called it instruction, the way many people expected her to. But she knew what she could do. Ruth Brooks knew. Sister Miriam Holloway knew. Pretending otherwise, she said, would have been a worse loss than any trophy she had been denied. Now letters reached her from kids who sang in churches, temples, bedrooms, and school stairwells. They wrote that they had been told they were not the right kind of talented for the rooms they wanted. Nia Brooks told the journalist she answered them the same way every time. She told them what Ruth Brooks had taught her. The truth does not need permission to exist. It only needs someone brave enough to let it be heard. The journalist called that beautiful, but Nia Brooks shook her head gently. "It is not beautiful," she said. "It is necessary." Outside the studio, Nashville traffic moved under evening lights while new music waited to enter the world. Back in Memphis, the Unbreakable Voices program was holding spring auditions for another class of students. Somewhere, another child with a hidden gift was learning that closed doors were not the end of the path. They were only obstacles that moved when someone refused to stay small in front of them. The journalist asked one final question before turning off the recorder. "What do you want people to take from your story?" she said. Nia Brooks looked directly at her and answered without needing time to think. She said talent can come from anywhere, and when you find it, you have only two honest choices. You either make space for it, or you step aside and stop pretending you do not hear it. The interview ended. 2 weeks later, Pencil Marks was released to the world. It did not top charts or go platinum, but it found the people who needed it most. It sold steadily, quietly, to listeners who had spent years trying to survive erasure with their gifts intact. On the wall of the Brooks apartment, Lorraine Brooks framed a new photograph beneath the old memories. It showed Nia Brooks at the Winter Gala, mid-note, holding light in the shape of sound. Beneath it, Lorraine Brooks framed the line from the album dedication in careful handwriting. Truth is a sound you cannot edit. New Hope Baptist, Sister Miriam Holloway, and the neighbors who had watched Nia Brooks grow already understood that line. They understood what the industry still struggled to admit. Excellence does not require permission. Genius lives in overlooked places. Sometimes it grows in rooms nobody important has ever entered. Sometimes the next voice that changes everything is singing right now where no camera is pointed. Will you recognize that voice before the world forces it to prove itself under a spotlight? Support music programs in underserved communities before another child has to fight alone for basic hearing. Listen carefully to the voices people have taught you to ignore, dismiss, or label too small. Make room early. Make room fairly. Make room before harm becomes a story people clap over later. If someone's gift unsettles your idea of who belongs, question the idea, not the gift. Remember that training matters, but access to training has never been equally distributed. Remember that polish is not the same as worth, and credentials are not the same as truth. Remember that communities, churches, kitchens, and classrooms carry masters. The world often refuses to name. Remember Ruth Brooks, whose brilliance was nearly erased except for pencil marks and what she passed down. Remember Nia Brooks, who refused to lie about her own voice so others could stay comfortable. Remember Sebastian Vale, not for his cruelty alone, but for the moment he finally told the truth. Let this story ask you what kind of witness you want to be when hidden greatness stands in front of you. Will you laugh with the room, stay quiet with the room, or become the person who listens before permission arrives? Powerful fictional stories like this matter because they reflect real walls, real gatekeeping, and real possibilities for change. If this story moved you, share it with someone who still believes talent always rises on its own. Support the teachers, choir directors, elders, and community spaces that keep undiscovered voices alive. Tell young artists the truth early. Your gift is real, even when powerful people do not know what to do with it.